both all the way to Hades. I want to go to Blue Alert.
Okay.
Thank you. Bit of professionalism.
Wait, I've got something. I'm punching it up.
Step up to Red Alert.
Sir, are you absolutely sure? It does mean changing the bulb.
It's been a while since I've done one of these, but while we've been fighting boredom during this lockdown, I found myself marathoning episodes of Red Dwarf, and it reminded me just how strikingly well written that show is. For the uninitiated, Red Dwarf is a British sitcom which began way back in 1988. It primarily follows Dave Lister, a petty repairman who spends 3 million years in stasis following a radiation leak, and emerges to find the entire crew dead and his ship marooned. Stuck with his former roommate, now reincarnated as a hologram, a creature which evolved from his cat, and eventually a domestic mechanoid. This being an old British sci-fi show, Red Dwarf's presentation is certainly a bit crude, but in that crudity is an unmistakable charm. At first, the production design is fixed on military greys and navy greys and is, admittedly, a bit dull, but from season 3 onward, Red Dwarf becomes far more colourful and innovative with its designs. None of it, and I mean none of it, is all that convincing, but that being said, the ingenuity with much of its sets and VFX and quirk of its designs are pretty charming. There's an attempt at building a proper universe here with some internal logic. You get the feeling this world started out as the whiz-bang spaceships of the Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers type, but then slowly degraded into the dingy, lived-in, bulky look of the first Alien film. The titular Red Dwarf itself is basically just a massive brick powered by a ram scoop, whereas the smaller Starbug vehicles wouldn't look out of place in a Dan Dare comic book. The whole production feels like an attempt to replicate the look of a Ridley Scott film, but on a fraction of the budget, it veers closer to the better Roger Corman looking films, like Battle Beyond the Stars or Galaxy of Terror. And while I'm not usually one to badmouth CGI, there is a definite childhood sense of fun with these old miniature effect shots. As someone who grew up on Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet, it's kind of a delight to see this stuff. There is often a feeling of do-it-yourself with these effects, filled to the brim with practical effects monsters and innovatively adapted sci-fi props. Now I usually spend more time than this on the overall presentation of shows, but we have to get to the good stuff, and that is undoubtedly the characters. Red Dwarf has one of the best comedic ensembles not just on TV, but ever. Not only is each actor terrifically talented, but their characters are so rich and deep, possessing so much potential for great jokes, but also great drama and stories. The initial protagonist, Dave Lister, is given a true authenticity by Craig Charles, who at the time had very little acting experience, let alone comedic experience. Instead, he was known as a hard-hitting poet at the time, discussing some very raw subject matter. But it's that sense of grit which lends Lister his solid moral core. He's a man with very little prospects in his life, not particularly smart or talented, and heavily slobbish. The great joke being that the last man alive is, well, a complete waste of a man. While Craig Charles had virtually no comedic acting experience, Chris Barry's Arnold Rimmer is the exact opposite. Chris Barry was a British TV comedy veteran, known for his variety of impressions and voices on shows like Spitting Image. As a result, his performance as Rimmer is simply phenomenal. Rimmer is the punching bag of the crew, being thoroughly unlikable in the most specific ways. Like Lister, he exists as a complete nobody, but is deluded into thinking his circumstances will change one day. As a result, he is snobbish, arrogant, and authoritarian, but also cripplingly cowardly and self-serving. Rimmer isn't simply an asshole for the sake of it, there's real depth to the character. Rimmer's major hang-ups are on his upbringing and parents, which he blames for the utter garbage of a human being he turned out to be. And yet, as the show consistently proves for tragic comedic effect, he is dead wrong. Rounding out the cast are Danny John Jules as the Cat, and Robert Llewellyn as Crichton. The Cat is a brilliant creation, being the coolest, most stylish, but also one of the stupidest life forms ever to exist. And John Jules simply glides through the series, being effortlessly cool and funny. But while Cat doesn't have the depth of Lister or Crichton, his fundamental shallowness is cleverly played for just as many laughs as the complexity of the others. Crichton, originally played by David Ross, who was delightful in his own way, is a smart piece of subterfuge, often taking on the role of the Spock-like science officer, but in reality being primarily designed as a robot maid of sorts. Llewellyn's grasp of the sci-fi dialogue as well as expert comedic timing is truly remarkable, and it's these strikingly well-written characters played to perfection by a supremely talented cast which is the primary driver of the excellently written comedy. There's no other way to say this, and it may seem obvious considering this is a sitcom, but Red Dwarf is just really fucking funny.
Incoming. I am Tarka Doll, an ambassador of the great Vendelian Empire.
The poor devil must have scrawled it in his death throes using a combination of his own blood and even his own intestines.
Who would do that?
Someone who badly needed a pen.
Name?
Dave Lister.
Occupation?
Bum.
Oftentimes, breaking down the exact mechanics of jokes can render them unfunny, but Red Dwarf's sense of humour is not only unique, but also extremely clever. Red Dwarf has the perfect marriage of rich characters with loads of comedic potential, and the sci-fi genre, which gives the writers ample opportunity to fulfill that potential in unique ways. Such as the episode Psy Moon, in which the warped neurotic psyche of Rimmer is rendered real by the moon the crew find themselves on, or a polymorph which transforms the characters by removing traits of their own personality. An artificial being who survives to the very end of time and dedicates his existence to judging every life form which ever existed to see if it's worthy of its own life, and it happens to confront the literal scum of the universe. Or a virtual reality world designed to fulfill the user's every desire, completely shitting the bed because one of the minds inhabiting it is the horrible mind of Arnold Rimmer. Just like the best of Star Trek, Red Dwarf uses science fiction to explore its characters. But while Star Trek used this tool to create drama or food for thought, Red Dwarf uses the tool to create fantastic comedy. Outside of that though, some of the concepts in each episode are just genius. A world where time moves backwards leads to a barroom brawl in reverse. A white hole which causes time and causality to happen randomly completely skews the order of a certain scene to hilarious effect. Droids originally designed for historical attractions, waging a war made up of history's most famous figures, and so on and so on. Fantastic ideas and concepts which would make brilliant straight-laced sci-fi is made even more enjoyable by being a comedy. Not only does it amuse casual audiences for its sense of humour, Red Dwarf also thrills and excites everyday sci-fi fans. Every fan has different opinions on the various eras of the show, with some citing the first two seasons as the best. Personally, I've always found the opposite, as the most creative plotting and richer production design was yet to take hold. The characters, storytelling and humour is still top notch in these early years, but personally I think the best of the best came after. Season 3 completely revamped the show with a hilariously self-aware text crawl to explain away the continuity errors and different production design. From here onwards, the sci-fi concepts and the mileage the writers get out of them increases tenfold, matching a more confident feeling series. Many of the show's classics are present in this era, topped in Season 6, which is one of my favourites. Season 6 sees the crew lose track of Red Dwarf itself, and stuck on Starbug trying to track it down. This series feels the most Star Trek-esque, encountering bizarre space phenomena, alien monsters, and more of the great character-focused concepts like Rimmerworld. Season 7 is a bit controversial with many fans. It maintained the same overall premise as Season 6, but shook up the filming style and cast. It was no longer filmed in front of a live audience, so it could take on a more cinematic style, and some versions of the season lose the laugh track altogether. Yet I never felt like the rhythm of the jokes really accommodated a lack of laugh track, which makes that version of the season kind of awkward to watch at times. If you do find it, I'd recommend finding the one with the laugh track still in it. Season 7 also saw the departure of Chris Barry as Rimmer, with Chloe Annette joining as Lister's interdimensional ex-girlfriend Christine Kachansky. Something is definitely lost with Rimmer's exit, but a new dynamic takes hold between the other characters and Kachansky, which still gets plenty of laughs. However, I think it's the following season where Annette and her character really shined. Season 8 is likewise controversial, as it's a big shake-up to the format. The crew finally tracked down Red Dwarf, but with its crew resurrected, our main characters are quickly thrown in jail, where they spend the rest of the season. While the running around space and more overt sci-fi hijinks are missed, Rimmer's return and the resulting character clashes make for some of the most consistently funny episodes in the entire show. Kachansky also finds great material in a rivalry with none other than Crichton. There's still plenty of sci-fi weirdness, but now the characters are even more the underdogs than they were before. Which at last brings us to the modern era, because in case you thought this was a thing of the past, Red Dwarf is actually still going to this day. Returning with a special in 2009, then full seasons in 2012, 16 and 17, and another feature-length special which aired just this year. This is an era which I am actually still catching up on, having not seen most of the recent season and special, but overall it's returned to the likes of seasons 3 to 6, with a new context. The universe around the characters has now changed, presenting us with even more strange sci-fi ideas and character-centric plots. The fact that after 32 years, Red Dwarf is still as good as it is truly incredible. Red Dwarf is the show which pulls off what so many other sci-fi comedies have never really been able to accomplish. The Orville, for example, works best when it isn't trying to be funny, and the recent Avenue 5 sci-fi setting is really just a kind of a framing device. But not only does Red Dwarf deliver the goods in terms of rich characters and great jokes, it also presents us sci-fi fans with endless creative concepts, a unique universe, and plenty of spaceships, aliens, and action. Not only is it funnier than many other sitcoms, it even gives most straightforward sci-fi shows a good run for their money. And that is why Red Dwarf is awesome. Thanks for watching. If you like what I do and want to see more videos, subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay up to date on all my new uploads. If you like what I do and want to help the channel grow, join me over on my Patreon where you can see videos like this early. Speaking of which, I'd like to quickly thank all of my patrons who are now appearing on screen. Have a good one, and as always, live long and prosper.